Welcome to the 11th episode of Byte-Sized JavaScript. In the former episode, we created a command line application, Octomate, that was useful in automating the installation, testing, and publishing of a repository. And in this episode, we'll be integrating Octomate into Buddy, which is a CI/CD pipeline. And before doing anything else, we will create a repository just to handle our automation bookkeeping. And I will call this repository, Automate All the Things maybe, which is a fun name. And then I'll go to Buddy, create a new project, and point it to the Automate All the Things GitHub repository that I just created. Perfect! Since we have a new project, now I can build my first pipeline in that. And before that, let's step back a little and talk about what we are trying to achieve here. Initially, we'll be automating the deployment of two repositories. One of them will be Babil and the other is Octomate repository itself. So in case of a version update in any of those repositories, we'll detect that, and then on an isolated Docker container, we'll clone those repositories and run npm install and npm test on those cloned repositories. And if both npm install and npm test commands exit with 0 status code, which is a successful exit, then we'll decide that our code is in good quality, and then we'll publish our code to npm. And also we'll have to bump the version numbers inside the package.json in both of the repositories so that Octomate can detect that version number has changed and then trigger its workflow basically. After having done that, we'll go back to Buddy and start building a pipeline. I'll name my pipeline Automate All the Things, and I'll configure it to run every week on a certain time. We'll also require Buddy to always execute this pipeline on that particular date every week, regardless of whether there is a change in the repository. We'll also choose the master branch as our target branch, and then tap Add a new pipeline to add a new pipeline basically. And on the next screen, we'll select a Docker container to run, and we'll install our dependencies, and we'll tap this link to further configure the container. I will name this action as install dependencies because that's what we are doing here essentially, and then I'll click on this box. Normally, when Buddy runs a Docker container, it does not preserve state. So when you run a different script in a different container, the two containers won't share any information between them. Which is most of the time good, but sometimes we need to override that behavior. And this is one of those times. In our case, we'll need to override the behavior because we would want to pass some data from the former container to the next container as a part of our workflow. We'll especially be interested in persisting node modules since you would not want to install the same dependencies at every step every time from scratch. We would also want to carry over this npm-rc file because that's the file that we'll be using to authenticate to npm to publish things, so we don't want to lose it. And also I don't need these initial setup commands, so I'll just comment them out and then I'll tap update. Then I'll browse the file system and create a new npm-rc file in the root folder of our container workspace. So I'll paste the contents of my local npm-rc, then save the file as .npm-rc, and then close this. Then I'll edit the actions in this pipeline by tapping to this link and then tapping to this plus icon. Now let's create another Docker container, then do a .node modules/bin/octomate and then paste the repository URL as a command line argument. We'll again preserve the npm-rc and node modules files and folders and save our action by tapping this button. And I'll name this action as publish Babil, which is the name of the repository that we are publishing. And next I'll follow an almost identical set of steps for a second repository, which is the Octomate repository itself. And finally, when all of the actions are executed back to back, we would want to trigger a notification event. And for this, we'll notify our beloved Byte-Sized JavaScript Slack channel. To do that, we'll first tap this on Success tab and then tap this Slack logo to add a new Slack action and then choose the release channel. And then we'll repeat the same steps for failure and for back to success events as well. Perfect. Now let's run this pipeline by tapping this Run Pipeline link. And you can see that we have built our dependencies successfully. We have installed, tested, and published two different repositories. And finally, we have successfully sent Slack notifications to our Byte-Sized JavaScript releases Slack channel. The good thing about this approach is I can add as many repositories as I like to this chain, and Buddy will automatically test and deploy them. And also it will let me know when something goes wrong and there is a failure in this pipeline. And I like it. Let's sum up what we have done so far. We have used a command line application, Octomate, to install, test, and deploy our projects. And we have also integrated a bunch of Octomate commands into Buddy by forming an execution pipeline. So in the following episodes, we'll slightly deviate from this DevOps mindset, so to speak, and we'll do something totally different. We'll learn about how we can do unit testing and code coverage analysis for our client-side and server-side JavaScript. And in that adventure, we'll learn to use great tools like Mocha, Chai, Sinon, Webpack, Esprima, and Istanbul, to name a few. And of course, we won't be able to cover them all in a single session, so get ready for a really fun journey that will span at least a handful of future episodes. And until then, may the source be with you.